Nestled deep in the dense woods of Vinton County, Ohio, lies an abandoned railroad tunnel once used by the Cincinnati and Marietta Railroad. Located between the small towns of Mineral and Hope, this tunnel marked the small town of Moonville. Before the railroad came through, Lucius Coe and his family of 9 kids and a wife traveled from western New York to settle into the dense woods in what would become the town of Moonville. The Ferguson family would soon join them, and the small mining town of Moonville was born. Moonville was never really a town in the traditional sense. It was more of a collection of homes scattered about the hills and the woods. Today, very little remains of the town except a few foundation ruins, a cemetery, and the abandoned rail tunnel, which is the subject of numerous long-running ghost stories that still remain to this day. Town founder Samuel Coe was said to have struck a deal with the railroad to allow the rail line to run through his land at no charge, thinking that this would be instrumental in helping him transport the rich natural resources that marked the rolling hills surrounding the small town. Steel was a booming industry at the time, and the nearby Hanging Rock region of Ohio was the nation's top producer of iron, requiring the coal and timber to feed the blast furnaces. Samuel Coe hoped the railroad could haul his coal and clay from the hills and make him a very rich man. For its part, the railroad was pushing west towards Cincinnati and was looking for a more direct route. At the time, the railroad was struggling financially, and this seemed like a very smart money-saving plan. The Moonville Rail Tunnel was built in 1855, and cutting through the stone was a dangerous and difficult task. Progress was slow, grinding away at a pace of just 1 to 2 feet per day. A 3-man crew drilled 3-foot deep holes into the rock with a sledgehammer and drill, and then blasted holes using black powder. Then the resulting rubble had to be hauled away by hand before another hole could be blasted. The wicks were lit by the fastest man in the crew, sometimes with disastrous results. The work was very difficult, and injuries and death were not uncommon, with virtually no safety standards in place. The tunnel was initially lined with the rock from the tunnel, and in 1903 completely lined with the bricks that are still in place today. The new rail line connected the small towns of Zaleski, Hope Furnace Station, Ingham Station, King Station, and Mineral. Trestles spanned Raccoon Creek, which winds its way around the small town. Raccoon Creek would occasionally flood and swell its banks, making life all the more difficult. The town of Moonville didn't have much, but did have a saloon, a train station, and a post office. Before the rail line was in place, there was a push to use Raccoon Creek to transport goods over the water, but the rail line soon made that idea obsolete. Death was never far away from Moonville, and estimates range from 21 to 33 people that lost their lives in and around the small town and the surrounding rail line. Life was difficult, and stories of drownings, train wrecks, shootings, stabbings, and gruesome accidents all became part of the fabric of life of this small Appalachian town. The last death reportedly occurred in 1978 when a 13-year-old girl fell off the trestle when a train forced her off the tracks into the creek below. Walking along the tracks was very dangerous, as the track was very narrow, making escape very difficult if you happened to be caught in the tunnel or crossing the trestle and a train was coming. The MacArthur Democrat on March 31st in 1859 would report a brakesman on the Marietta and Cincinnati Railroad fell from the cars near Moonville last Tuesday, March 29th, 1859. He was fatally injured when the passing wheels of a train ground to a shapeless mass the greater part of one of his legs. He was taken on the train to Hamden, and Doctors Wolfe and Rannells sent for to perform amputation, but the prostration of the vital energies was too great to attempt it. The man is probably dead ere this. The accident resulted from too free use of liquor. The heyday of Moonville didn't really last long. By the turn of the century, the area coal mines started to dry up and close down, and the families of Moonville would drift away. The last family left Moonville in 1947, leaving the town abandoned. By the 1960s, all the buildings were gone, either demolished or lost to nature. There was little to mark the site other than the Moonville Cemetery, the tunnel, and the foundation stones found near the tracks. With the town long gone, rail traffic would increase on the single-line track. In 1973, several rail lines merged, and soon up to 14 trains a day made their way through the Moonville Tunnel. Railroad engineers were rumored to call this stretch of rail the most lonesome, desolate stretch of track between Parkersburg and Cincinnati. Stories of phantom lights around Moonville began to be told by railroad employees that passed through the tunnel, and it was said that the conductors were to be given extra time to travel through the area due to the mysterious lights that seemed to appear out of nowhere. Stories of phantom lights and strange phantom-like people walking along the tracks began to surface. When these lights were investigated, nothing could be found. As early as 1895, the Chillicothe Gazette contains an article about the ghost of Moonville, decked with a pure white robe and flowing beard, with eyes like balls of fire. This otherworldly spectral being was said to carry a lantern and moved from the path of the train at the very last minute and disappeared into the rocks. It was said that conductors were instructed to ignore this phantom light if they happened to see this mysterious apparition at the Moonville Tunnel. In June 1985, CSX announced that the line between Cumberland, Maryland and Cincinnati would be reduced to secondary status, and the last scheduled freight train passed through Moonville in August of that year. Trains continued to run until the line was abandoned and the rails and trestles were pulled up in 1988. With the tracks and the trestle over Raccoon Creek now gone, the Moonville Tunnel was only accessible by crossing Raccoon Creek, which was often too deep to cross without swimming. A few years ago, Moonville would experience a resurgence of popularity. More and more people would come to visit the history and experience the ghost stories and legends themselves. In fact, it's probably easier to visit today now more than it's ever been, largely in part due to the efforts of a Rails to Trails group. The Moonville Rail Trail Group was formed by a group of dedicated volunteers and has done a fantastic job improving access and working with the state of Ohio to replace the trestle leading into the tunnel, as well as several bridges along the trail. These trail improvements now make it easier to walk directly from Moonville all the way to the next tunnel at Kings Hollow Station. Moonville's resurgence in popularity has even led to an annual event called Moonlight at Moonville that is very popular around Halloween each year. Over time, there have been many legends and rumors about the Moonville Tunnel, including several tales of ghosts that allegedly still haunt visitors to this day. The many legends include 4 different ghosts: the engineer, the brakeman, the lavender lady, and the bully. While these seem to be the established legends today, many other stories are also tied to this location, including the ghost of a man who was a train conductor and was drunk and fell in front of a train and was decapitated. Another theory says that the conductor was having an affair with the brakeman's wife and he was pushed out of the train and ran over. Some local legends also claim that Moonville was stricken with smallpox, and the residents of the town sent their healthiest person to the tracks to signal the train and get help. As the fellow approached the tunnel, he was apparently sick and delirious from smallpox and staggered in front of the oncoming train, waving his yellow lantern, but was decapitated in the process. While these legends linger on, the next 4 stories seem to be the most accepted of the bunch. First is the story of the engineer. This is the ghost of Frank Lawhead, who was an engineer for the Marietta and Cincinnati Railroad Company, and he began to haunt the tracks after his train collided head-on with an oncoming train in the year of 1880 between the towns of Moonville and Ingham Station, a short distance away. After the collision, both trains rolled down the embankment, pinning Lawhead underneath. Visitors have seen a ghostly figure holding a lantern while walking alongside the track and through the tunnel in a desperate attempt to warn people about the phantom train wreck about to occur. There are many reports of seeing the swinging light attributed to him. The next legend is of the brakeman. And this story is believed to be the ghost of a drunken young man who was working on a train as a brakeman. The young man had just gotten paid and stopped at a tavern at the nearby town of Zaleski. Making his way home with a liquor bottle in hand, he fell asleep on the tracks and met his demise by the train passing over his body. The use of liquor was very common during the heyday of Moonville, and many stories seem to include this factor. Oftentimes it is said you can see the spirit of this man laying down next to the track, still clutching the bottle of whiskey. The next story is of the Lavender Lady. Visitors of the Moonville Tunnel have seen this thin, elderly woman walking alongside the trail. Shortly after, she disappears and the scent of lavender fills the air. It is believed to be the ghost of Mary Shea, who was killed while walking along the tracks. She was struck while walking on the trestle and dragged all the way to the entrance of the tunnel. The next legend is the legend of the Bully. And the Bully is believed to be the ghost of David Baldy Keaton. And the Keaton family was prominent in the area, and they owned a lot of land, including a large amount of land by the Hope Furnace. Baldy Keaton was a farmer who often terrorized the residents of Moonville and was known to be abusive to his wife and children. Baldy was also the area tax collector and thus probably didn't have a lot of friends. Baldy also liked to fight when he got drunk, which was often. The legend also says that one of Baldy's tactics was to bear hug his opponent until he gasped for air and would often pass out due to the lack of oxygen. After a long day in court, Baldy was at the Hope Furnace Station Saloon when he decided to start another fight. Baldy would lose the fight, and a group of men kicked Baldy out of the saloon. After he didn't return home after a few days, he was found dead along the tracks, having been run over by several trains, and the coroner declared he probably passed out on the tracks. However, many believed it was murder. The legend now says that the ghost of Baldy Keaton stands above the tunnel and stares at the approaching visitors. He will sometimes throw pebbles and stones at the tunnel's visitors below, still trying to get revenge on his enemies. The legend of the Bully was also told by young mothers in the area to their children.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And the mothers also used to tell their children to not stay out at night or else the bully would get them. The nearby Moonville Cemetery served the community and contains many of Moonville's citizens that passed away over time and are laid to rest on a hill overlooking the town. Only a few headstones still remain today with names like Jones and Coe and others that made Moonville their home. Nobody is exactly sure how many people are buried here, as nature and vandals have destroyed many of the headstones, making an accurate accounting very difficult. Some accounts have as many as 28 people buried there. Town founder Samuel Coe is buried there, but his headstone is missing. As well, Charles Ferguson is also buried here after having been run over by a passing train. You can visit the Moonville Tunnel today. Come and experience the rich history and see for yourself if the story and the legends are true.